Hey, my name is Blake Bettner. I'm the managing editor of Worn & Wound. Today, we are talking about the TAG Heuer Skipper Carrera. That's right, the Skipper is back. This is kind of the original iconic sailing watch from TAG Heuer that was first revealed in 1968. This was a year after a ship called the Intrepid won the America's Cup. The deck of that Intrepid was a beautiful teal green, and that is a color that has been pulled into the Skipper colorway. First seen in 1968, again seen in 2017 in a beautiful limited edition done with Hodinkee. And just this month now we have a regular production Carrera Skipper that pulls in the same colorway, and it uses the chassis of the new 39mm glassbox design of the Carrera that we saw introduced at Watches and Wonders earlier this year. This is a design, a shape, a case, a dial, crystal that we were quite fond of when we saw it, and it works exceptionally well with the Skipper colorway. As you might imagine, it's a very handsome colorway. The base is Carrera blue, and then it pulls that teal color into the hour totalizer at the left, as well as the minute totalizer on the right. That counter on the right is separated into 3 distinct sections, which is put to use by yachts, sailboat, yacht racing, whatever you want to call it, that breaks down the start sections of the race in 5-minute increments. The first increment is a slightly darker green teal. The middle segment is that lighter teal. And then the final 5-minute segment is bright orange, which we also see on the timing seconds hand that we'll get into a little bit later on. There is a running seconds hand on this watch as well, though you'd be forgiven for missing it at first glance because it doesn't have a backing on it. You only have the minutes indexed every 5 minutes down there and a polished seconds hand running. There is a date inset at the bottom there as well with the word Swiss above it, which is a nice callback to the original. There are quite a few changes here from the original, and I think that's just fine. This is not meant to be a reissue. This is just a return of the Skipper colorway, and it kind of is done in a thoroughly modern way. The Carrera is, of course, 60 years old this year, and we saw a redesigned version of it at Watches and Wonders in this 39mm case that is about 46mm from lug to lug and a little over 13mm in total thickness. It wears beautifully. It has a very distinct modern vibe to it, thanks to how the dial is designed underneath the crystal. This is not a flat dial. It kind of slopes into the middle section with a high ridge running along the edge of just inside the crystal. So it kind of offers this full 360 view of the chapter ring at the very edge of the dial, along with these kind of sharp tooth markers that point at each of the hour batons. Those hour batons are really beautifully done here. They themselves have a slight slope down into the dial. They're highly reflective, and they've got quite a few interesting cuts, bevels, surfaces there to enjoy. Really, when this thing catches a little bit of light, it pops. And this is, of course, accented by the fully polished lugs as well. But don't worry, it does have a brushed case wall along the side. So let's get into some of the quirks of this watch, of which there are a few that you might find somewhat polarizing. First off, the word Skipper on the dial. The original had the Skipper above the Heuer logo at 12 o'clock. This model moves the Skipper labeling into the hour totalizer, kind of framing the bottom of that subdial. And they've got the word Carrera above the TAG Heuer shield at the top. Now, I would have welcomed that Skipper back at the top of the dial, but given that this is kind of a modern iteration and it's not trying to be a throwback or a vintage recreation or anything, I think it's fine here. The word Skipper is a little jarring to see there, but in total, it just kind of adds up to be one of those things that make this a slightly strange watch, and I think that adds a bit of character to it overall. Now, one of the other elements that is slightly unusual are the tips of the hour and minute hand, which get orange triangles. You don't really notice it at first, but once you do notice it, it's hard to not see. It kind of reminds me of manicured nails a little bit, and those are, again, accented by small loom plots at the outset of each of the hour markers, all done in orange. The whole colorway is tied together quite nicely, even though the teals and the greens are kind of the star of the show here. But everything is accented really beautifully as blue and orange sit opposite one another on the color wheel, if I'm remembering my art class correctly. Inside, TAG Heuer is using their own TH20-06 movement. This is an automatic chronograph with a column wheel. It is visible through an exhibition case back, so I don't find it all that beautiful. It is there for you to see, and it doesn't seem to affect the overall thickness of the watch too much, so no harm, no foul there. And the oscillating weight has a shape built into it that's reminiscent of the TAG Heuer shield. Kind of a nice touch. Now, on the wrist, this watch wears really beautifully. Those measurements that I quoted, 39mm, about 13mm in thickness, and 46mm from lug to lug, all add up to a really great presence on the wrist There's a big personality here though, with all of these polished surfaces and facets. Again, this thing throws a lot of light back at you. So it's not something that's going to really fly under the radar despite its sub 40mm size. That does make it quite comfortable though. So it's kind of the best of all worlds in terms of that. This is a big colorway, so I don't really mind all the polished surfaces here. It all kind of goes well together. The one issue that I have with the watch is the strap, which looks fine. It's kind of sailcloth, canvas-like, and it's a little stiff in the wrong areas right up by the watch. So it adds up to an experience that might find you constantly adjusting and moving the watch about to get the comfortable fit, but wearing it throughout the course of the day just never quite seems to sit right. Thankfully, it looks pretty good on all the straps that I've put it on so far. There is no bracelet option here. Would like to see a nice bracelet option from TAG Heuer on the new Carrera at some point down the line, presumably, which would fit this watch, which would be a welcome move in my book. But nonetheless, we've had it on a NATO strap and a gray satin strap. They all look really great on this watch, as you might imagine. This watch is priced $6,750, and it feels about like a $6,000 watch. This is a lot of watch for that money, and I applaud TAG Heuer for not making this a more expensive limited edition, but rather just adding it to the regular collection at a reasonable price point. And there are a few other interesting watches in that price point, namely the Omega Speedmaster that I have on my wrist, which is around the same price. The TAG Heuer might be a touch shy in terms of overall fit and finish compared to the Omega, but it's a column wheel movement, so it feels about on par price-wise to me with that watch. And that is the TAG Heuer Skipper chronograph. But I've got a lot more of my thoughts on this watch now live in the full review that you can find on Worn and Wound right now. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this watch. Be sure to leave them down in the comments below. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. And if you enjoyed this content, please be sure to leave a like and share. It helps us out a lot. You can find all kinds of other great watch news on wornandwound.com. Until next time, take care.